Some places in the world teem with life, their streets overflowing with people, while others remain remarkably quiet, almost untouched by the rush of humanity. Southeast Asia is a striking example of this contrast, a region where the difference between bustling cities and tranquil landscapes is especially vivid. Picture four neighboring nations, Vietnam and Thailand, both alive with energy and movement. Vietnam is home to nearly 100 million people, while Thailand's population is about 70 million, making them some of the most densely populated countries in the region. Their cities pulse with activity, and even the countryside is vibrant, filled with the sounds of daily life, commerce and tradition. In stark contrast, their neighbors Laos and Cambodia are far quieter, with a sense of calm that feels almost otherworldly compared to their bustling neighbors. Laos has just over 7 million people, and Cambodia around 17 million, together, less than a quarter of Vietnam's population. The difference is stark, not just in numbers, but in how people are spread across the land. In Laos and Cambodia, vast stretches of countryside remain sparsely populated with small villages separated by miles of forests, rivers and fields. Population density tells a deeper story. Why do Vietnam and Thailand support such large, concentrated populations, while Laos and Cambodia seem so empty and open? The answer is complex, woven from the threads of geography, history, economics, and the enduring spirit of the people who call these lands home. To truly understand, we must look at the land itself, the stories of the past and the echoes of tragedy and resilience that still shape these countries today. Imagine the energy of Hanoi or Bangkok, where the streets never seem to sleep and the city lights burn late into the night. Then compare it to the profound quiet of rural Laos or Cambodia, where the pace of life is slower and the silence is broken only by the sounds of nature. This is the puzzle. Rivers that give life, mountains that isolate, ancient empires that once flourished, and modern tragedies that have left deep scars. We seek to understand how these lands, shaped by both hardship and hope, might one day find their own unique rhythm of life and growth. The contrast is not just about numbers, but about the powerful forces, natural, historical, and human, that shape where people live and how societies evolve. Let's begin to unravel this fascinating story and discover what makes the population puzzle of Southeast Asia so unique. The land itself shapes the fate of nations. Geography is not just a backdrop, it is the stage on which history unfolds, influencing every aspect of life from ancient times to today. Mountains, rivers, and plains dictate where we can farm, build, and thrive. These natural features act as both barriers and gateways, determining the flow of people, goods, and ideas. In Southeast Asia, geography is destiny. The region's dramatic terrain has shaped its cultures, economies, and even its conflicts. Fertile, arable land is the foundation for large populations. Where the soil is rich and water is plentiful, communities can flourish and societies can grow more complex. Without enough food, societies cannot grow. Scarcity of resources limits not just population, but also innovation and stability. Surplus crops allow villages to become cities. This is the engine of demographic expansion. With extra food, people can specialize, trade, and build civilizations. Laos is dominated by rugged mountains. Less than 10% of its land is suitable for farming. The landscape itself limits where people can settle and what they can achieve. Steep slopes and dense forests make large-scale rice cultivation nearly impossible. The challenge of taming the land has shaped the lives and livelihoods of generations. Cambodia's central plain seems ideal, but much of its soil is sandy and poor. Appearances can be deceiving. True fertility is rare. Only the area around Tonle Sap Lake is truly fertile. Here the land supports dense communities and vibrant agriculture. Most of Cambodia lacks the rich land needed for dense populations. The struggle to find good soil shapes where people live and how they survive. Geography sets a natural limit on growth in both countries. The land's gifts and its challenges define the boundaries of possibility. Where the land is generous, people gather. Where it is harsh, they remain few. The story of a nation begins with the ground beneath its feet. This is the first piece of the population puzzle. To understand a country's destiny, we must first understand its geography. Now let's travel to Vietnam, a country where the landscape is shaped and defined by water in ways both dramatic and subtle. Here, the story of the land is written by water, as rivers carve their way through lush fields and life flourishes along their banks. The Red River in the north and the Mekong in the south have created two of the world's most fertile deltas, transforming vast stretches of land into green, productive heartlands. These regions are Vietnam's heartlands, vast, flat, and rich with silt, where the soil is renewed each year by the river's floods, making the land incredibly fertile. The Mekong Delta is a maze of rivers and islands, so productive that farmers can harvest 3 rice crops a year, feeding not just Vietnam but exporting rice across the world. This abundance has drawn people for centuries, supporting huge populations in small areas, and giving rise to vibrant communities and bustling markets along the waterways. The Red River Delta is the cradle of Vietnamese civilization, engineered for over 2,000 years to control floods and grow rice. Generations have built dikes, canals, and irrigation systems, turning floodplains into reliable farmland. Intensive agriculture here has allowed dense populations to thrive for generations, with villages packed closely together, surrounded by endless rice paddies. The land and people have shaped each other, creating a resilient, vibrant society that has adapted to the rhythms of the rivers and the challenges of the floods. Thailand, too, has its own fertile Chao Phraya basin, where the river's gifts have supported great cities and rich farmlands. In contrast, Laos and Cambodia lack such vast productive regions. Their landscapes are more rugged, and their rivers do not spread out to create wide, fertile plains. Their rivers do not create the same abundance, and so their populations remain smaller, their villages more scattered. Where the land provides, people flourish; where it does not, populations remain sparse, and life is shaped by scarcity rather than plenty. Geography's impact is clear in the crowded deltas and the quiet uplands, a living map of how water and land shape human destiny. The puzzle begins to make sense, as we see how rivers, soil, and people are woven together in the story of Southeast Asia. Let's return to Laos and Cambodia for a closer look. Laos is over 70% mountains and plateaus, isolating villages and making travel and trade difficult. This fragmentation hinders economic development and infrastructure, keeping populations small and scattered. The Mekong River in Laos is wild, carving gorges and rapids, not creating broad, fertile plains. Farming is limited to small valleys, capping how many people the land can support. Cambodia's central plain is drained by the Tonle Sap and Mekong, with the lake's annual floods creating a fertile heartland. This area supported the Great Khmer Empire, but beyond it, soils are poor and water management is limited. Fertility is concentrated, not widespread. Most of Cambodia's land cannot support dense populations. The bounty is found in pockets surrounded by scarcity. Geography shapes where people can live and thrive. The land's limits are clear in both countries. This helps explain their emptiness. Geography is only part of the story. The 20th century brought unimaginable suffering to Laos and Cambodia. The Vietnam War spilled over, engulfing both nations in violence. Laos became the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. Millions of bombs, many still deadly today. Bombing killed and displaced hundreds of thousands, making farming impossible and leaving a legacy of unexploded ordnance. In Cambodia, American bombing destabilized the country, fueling the rise of the Khmer Rouge. These wars tore apart societies, killed civilians, and left scars that still shape the land and its people. The violence didn't just halt growth, it reversed it. The echoes of war still haunt the fields and villages. The demographic impact was devastating. Cambodia's darkest hour came under the Khmer Rouge. From 1975 to 1979, Pol Pot's regime forced the population into labor camps, abolished cities, and waged war on knowledge and culture. Nearly 2 million Cambodians, about a quarter of the population, died from execution, starvation, and disease. The country lost an entire generation, its brightest minds, skilled workers, and cultural leaders. The genocide left a demographic hole that endures today. When the Khmer Rouge fell, Cambodia was shattered, its population reduced, its society traumatized. Recovery was slow and painful. The killing fields cast a long shadow, fundamentally altering Cambodia's demographic path. Even decades later, the population remains far smaller than its neighbors. The scars of genocide are still visible in the country's age structure and society. Cambodia's tragedy is a key reason for its emptiness. The legacy of loss is profound. While Cambodia's genocide is infamous, Laos's tragedy was long hidden. The country became a secret battlefield during the Vietnam War, bombed more than all of Europe in World War II. Villages were destroyed, and people fled or lived in caves to survive. Over 200,000 died and hundreds of thousands more became refugees. The war devastated infrastructure and agriculture, leaving the country in ruins. Many educated Laotians fled, creating a brain drain that crippled recovery. Unexploded bombs still threaten lives and limit development. War deaths, refugees, and lingering dangers stunted Laos's population growth for decades. The hidden war's impact is still felt in the country's emptiness. After the wars, economic isolation deepened the divide. While Thailand and Vietnam embraced growth, Laos and Cambodia turned inward with planned economies, causing stagnation. Thailand's boom attracted workers, concentrating populations, while Laos and Cambodia saw their youth leave for better opportunities. Laos's landlocked status made trade difficult, limiting investment and integration. Both countries remained rural and agrarian, with most people living in scattered villages. Urbanization lagged behind, keeping population density low. Economic and cultural factors reinforced the emptiness geography and history had created. Today, Laos and Cambodia are changing. The shadows of war and tragedy are receding as both nations embrace peace and economic growth. Populations are rising, and a new generation looks to the future with hope. Laos is harnessing hydropower and building new connections to neighbors. Cambodia's economy is booming, driven by tourism and manufacturing. Jobs and rising living standards are slowing migration abroad. Cambodia's population has more than doubled since the Khmer Rouge era. Laos is growing steadily. Yet the legacy of war lingers. Unexploded bombs and trauma remain. Geography and history set the stage, but man-made tragedies carve the deepest voids. Now these nations are filling with new life and promise. Their journey is a lesson in resilience and renewal.